Well, these videos are going to be delayed because Spectrum is still crash and burned. It's 9:13 in the morning West Coast time. It's still May 23rd, 2024. All right, what are we going to do? I had received a message saying that it's going to be up until 11 o'clock when I'm going to have power. I'm able, actually not power, but service. So I'm able to save information on it on a flash drive and hopefully get this stuff sent out. I can't get news unless I'm going to one of the channels and be stuck with it. So that's my situation right now as it is. I'm using cellular data to surf the internet, use it as a hotspot. Do I want to do this? Hell no. But the connection is so damn slow, there's nothing else I can do for it. So everyone else is having instant entertainment and instant stuff happening. And it's slow moving right now. I can't get things working fast enough. I don't know why I'm doing CNN. It's the national stuff. And it sucks. It sucks. I'm dealing with, like I had back a long time ago. Dave and I were live and we were dealing with cellular all the time. We'd listen to the news when we actually had a news app running on our phones. And we'd use the internet off our phones, directly off our phones to surf the internet. We'd watch DVDs when we had a burr brass or bored as hell. I can't give live because, well, I don't know. It just doesn't work. I was going through one of the news articles on CNN, not politics, but something I had seen on YouTube a few years back. Well, we started out with the COVID nightmare, and this was right after my brother's passing. I was watching videos concerning about Antarctica, and I actually had weird ass longings to go there. One of the most expensive things to go to is, uh, if you're a tourist, is either go to Africa or Antarctica. Both are inhospitable places at times. Africa, hot. Well, I don't know about Africa. I hadn't seen any videos concerning about it. Certain countries having civil wars left and right, but Antarctica is its own war zone of a sort. It is the major cooling mechanism of planet Earth. Supposedly, the North Pole area and the South Pole areas are the ice cubes trying to keep a refrigerator from overheating. And because the overheating is catching up with the ice, it's melting things left and right. So naturally, we're having issues, boys and girls. But while the ice cube is still there, it has its own charms, but it also has its own issues. I know there are certain physical parameters I would never fit as a staffer. As a tourist, just as well. I'd seen these kids in 20s, 30s, even people 40s and 50s going back to this place because they say it's magical. And a frozen tundra, maybe, if it has that much of a hold on a person. You have to be of a psychological nature to deal with people on a constant basis and communities without having major issues because you depend upon each other for survival, for living. There are bases out there all over Antarctica from different countries. The United States does its own. So does UK and a few other countries, France, Spain, Australia. They all share the same love of adventure on an ice cube. Looking at the place, it's a continent full of ice and memory. It is a place of danger. There are stories about people coming back from Antarctica injured, not from being mauled, but from how dangerous walking on ice and dealing with ice is. CNN was running a story concerning about life on the last continent of the earth that is trying to keep its human presence down to a bare minimum, and yet they've got expanded all over the place. The countries have created a charter, created a pact, a treaty. Those who are coming over to Antarctica, you keep the human presence minimized, very much so. You pack your trash out. You filter the water like crazy, especially when you're going to be using it as wastewater. You have to filter it. You have to. They're trying to keep contamination down to almost a nil, despite the fact they have bases out there who are monitoring environmental things all over the place. It's basically for not just tourists. It's lowest end, but they still would like to have visitors to be educated about it. But they're trying to keep an eye to see whether or not how much of an impact the rest of the world is having on this ice cube, particularly when we keep screwing around with the environmental controls of it. You know, forest burned here, forest burned there, temperature increases one way or another, buildup of gases. But besides the environmental, they're also doing scientific measurements of life, both microscopic to the mammals, to fish. They're also doing astronomical measurements as well. Now, some people go over there because they heard about the lure and about how Antarctica gets under your skin, how you want to keep coming back more and more. For tourism, it's one thing, but to actually live in this kind of environment, they don't understand, and they have to have residents from these bases come onto ships and tell the tourists how exactly it is. They can only do so much on YouTube or some articles. It's not a mystical, magical place. It is a hostile environment. You're dealing with extreme cold constantly. It's not a t-shirt kind of weather. You don't get umbrellas. And the food sucks. They have to get fresh fruit, fresh vegetables whenever the shipping season, and I probably call it a shipping season because it's the only time when ships can come into the harbor and transport material from the outside world to this ice cube, I call it. And certain ice cubes that they actually do test, they're worried about uh, contamination from outside world screwing up their samples. I'm more worried about the samples screwing up the environment of the outside world. I'm worried about ancient diseases, life forms, microscopic, that would be thawed and then released. And how are we supposed to be able to deal with a plague like that when it starts multiplying? That's what I kept thinking about the COVID nightmare. Where did they get this damn thing from in the first place? They said it came from one place or another place or another place or another place. You know, it scared the hell out of me because of misinformation at this point over here, but still a fantasy was going on. Is what if the damn thing came from a frozen sample, thawed, and got set loose? That thing scares me. That scares me. I know about the biological life would already be not able to be, not viable to be alive. If there was such a way to make them alive, we'd do worse than Jurassic Park. Antarctic does have its moments there, but as I was trying to learn more and more about it, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way in hell I'd be able to survive that environment, at least not in my present condition. No way. Ships coming off, the Earth ships coming over there, going to a couple of areas, and some of the ships, they're especially equipped to deal with it. You just can't sail something like Queen Mary 2 or Queen Elizabeth 2 or another liner to go down there, let alone a Carnival cruise or Royal Caribbean. These ships have to be specially built as icebreakers, the ones that are going down there to do transports. Heavy construction in the metal and in the hull, and being able to ram right through ice without any issues with the hull itself. No breakage or anything, because once you hit the cold water, hypothermia kicks in and you're an ice cube yourself. Or some other life forms meet. But once your ship gets in the water and going out there and sailing, you also have to have the proper gear for it. Worse than going over to Alaska, because it's a lot colder in Alaska. Actually, it's a lot colder in Antarctica than it is in Alaska, as I discovered. You have to layer yourself. I didn't even understand that. You're going through the fjords when it gets cold up there and icy. You still have to layer yourself up. You just can't go out there with a light jacket and expect to be warm. You're dealing with negative degrees. And in a guy in my condition, there's no way I'd be able to survive that damn thing. I had a pipe dream of going over to Alaska and seeing it with all the damn snow and stuff, but I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to deal with that one. Neuropathy and cold don't mix. I'm not looking forward to going to the continent of Africa unless I'm going to be seeing some hot spots or trying to avoid hot spots as much as possible. Not looking forward to that, even though there was romanticism going on left and right about Africa throughout our lifetimes. What was it? Edgar Rice Burroughs was trying to treat us to the world of Tarzan. Nobody ever treated us to any Antarctic heroes out there because there wasn't any. It was rough going into Antarctica and trying to survive it and coming right back out. Said before about the life on the base, or even on the major base of McMurdo, as I was going through the video studies and reading stuff. It was terrifying as hell. People that have to do several jobs at once, or many times if they have to. A surgeon can be a bartender if they had to, or an administrator of the place for a time. Garbage disposal, waste disposal, sewage treatment. How about transporting supplies to and from in areas? Being a cook, when you're limited to supplies that you have brought, canned foods would last for a long time, but they still have to be replenished. And fresh fruit and milk products and meat, bread. Try living on crackers. You get fresh fruit in there. I'm talking about maybe if you happen to get something like this. First week or less, maybe. Those would be gone. You enjoy a banana on a limited basis if you had to. Then after that. But I'm talking about consumption within a week. They're gone. They're history. Oranges, and strawberries, and citrus fruit, and melons on a constant basis. I mean, if they actually had, fruit, that'd be no problem. But they deal with canned stuff and have to worry about medical stuff all the time. They had to be checked out. Dentistry is a top industry out there. And they have to manage with whatever supplies they bring in. And not to mention whatever supplies that's already been brought on board. You have to purchase some of that stuff if you can, just to keep your own little supplies going. Not to mention bringing in your own entertainment. Video games are one thing, and books, magazines, DVDs, Blu-rays. Build up libraries over there for the other people to read and use. See, when you bring in your own entertainment, if you're part of that kind of community, you leave it for the next group, especially if your group is going to be coming out, and you have to keep reapplying each year to stay there for a while. How would you like to deal with darkness for about 3 or 4 months, maybe longer? How would you like to deal with that one? Constant darkness, and the wind's blowing like crazy. I was seeing the videos concerning about McMurdo, but also I was just seeing Ed Munson more. About a few people, a few years back, surviving in the darkness, and how empty during the wintertime would be. During the summertime is when they have the lights going on for about three or 4 months, maybe 5 months at a time. Twilight a few months, and then after that, dark. But they also have to be mechanics. They have to be supply sergeants of sorts. They'll have to keep track of what they've got being used, and they're going to be going through the food like crazy. But they're not going through the food like crazy. But they are going to be expected to have a lot of calories burned, because the cold weather makes you burn off a lot of those calories. I was watching these things during the isolation here. Sometimes I kept thinking, if this was part of Antarctica, maybe I'm dealing with it as well. I'd be going through the tissue too much. Sometimes when you're out there on the ice, maybe about a couple of months or maybe about a few weeks, getting some surveys done, getting some samples pulled into the stations, you have to live like a camper. Back your trash out, back your trash in. You're bringing stuff out, you got to back the trash back. Not to mention having limited hygiene. You got to worry about that one there too. staffers would stay behind, but doing everything else in the place if they could. It would have been perfect training if you're going to be doing a Mars mission, not just environment. But we're talking about isolation. We're talking about people doing everyone else's jobs. If they're going to be doing this big thing on the moon or big thing on Mars. Well, if you want total isolation, work on an Antarctic program. Small community, smaller places. You're living like dorms. There's not that much comfort in it. Not like we're used to in our apartments or our houses these days. If I had been about 30 years younger and had some knowledge and expertise to give these guys, I probably would have. I probably would have. During the past decade and a chunk of change, I felt more and more isolated and alone from anybody and everybody these days. I would not be a good team player. But if it would help to be a team player that way, then maybe it would have helped get me past a few things. But I'll tell you one thing. You get used to people real fast, and then after that, they're gone. I don't think I would have been. I don't think I'd been able to deal with it, to tell you the truth. I don't think so, not in my lifetime. Dealing with that is not the funnest damn thing, I'll tell you. It isn't. How am I supposed to deal with it? I mean, if I actually had. If I had been living in Antarctica for a while, I don't think I'd be able to deal with the mainland out here. I'd be wanting to be in that isolated area with the people left and right, be closer to them. It'd be like a family. They would one family for another family. But what would get to me at that point is when the family leaves permanently. And I'm not just talking about going away for a season or two and maybe coming back. I mean, I'm talking about usually what I talk about, death all the time. So that's what gets to me right now. That's what I'm dealing with. Probably a death of a self, one way or another. Maybe I would have been suited for it if I'm not so physically screwed up and just be part of something that I wanted to be part of. Yeah, looks like they just got the systems working. So let's see what we've got. It's 9:37 right now. We're taking that offline. And we're going for the other one. And hooking up. Let's see. Alright, let's see what we can work with here. It's 9:37 right now, so we got access. Okay, cool. That means I can get off my damn phone. Alrighty, kick it in. But yeah, getting back to that, I think I'd want to. If I could physically, I would try it for a season just to see if I would be able to deal with the isolation, if not just the safety concerns left and right. And right now, I'm surviving. Alrighty. We got internet, boys and girls. Everything else is resetting. That's good. So we can send some stuff out to the internet. Yay. Now I can get myself back in and see the rest of the world. But imagine not having this. Starlink satellites out there that Musk's companies had been putting up. They're supposed to be helping out with internet outages and isolationism. We want the whole world to have internet access. As long as you got the power for it and reception, you should be okay on it. But for the most part, what I've been able to deal with the isolation on DVDs and spotty communications sounds like what I had to do first few months living in this place. When Dave and I moved into this place with our dogs, we didn't have any furniture or anything else in this place. I should be kind of lucky and blessed and not cursed as hell, but I've got comfortable living. I've got comfortable living in this place. But out in the Antarctic, it would not be comfortable living. It would not be. There wouldn't be any sleeping all the time. Not a tourist trap. It's a working environment. For a tourist, he's only there for maybe about a day, maybe a two, or just a few hours at a time. And then they leave, and that's about it. And say, oh, I experienced Antarctica. No, you didn't. Unless you pulled a season or two, you didn't experience a damn thing. I would see Antarctica. I would see the countryside. I would see the landscape and the inhabitants. I would see the animal life. But have I really experienced it? Not a damn thing. So at this point, the only thing I can say is, oh well. So that one's going to be put into profiling as well.